Hello and welcome to this overview of Module 1 of Digital Finance. My name's Courtney and I'll be giving you a quick few-minute overview to help you prepare yourself as you study this module. So, nothing to do with digital finance, but everything to do with the idea of transformation and innovation. What we do at one point in time seems to be normal. So for hundreds of years, agriculture was done by hand. We occasionally used animals and tools, but it was hard work and the majority of the population did it. And only a few others got to work in other areas. But as we had our industrial revolution and as we became more efficient and things like combine harvesters and giant tractors came along with fertilizer, we were able to expand our food production but significantly drop the number of people involved. And so that transformation is the kind of image I want to put in your mind as you read about digital finance, as you read about new ways of doing business, new ways of doing financing. The efficiencies and the automation and the data and the analysis is incredibly powerful. Another example of transformation now in the manufacturing realm, we go back sort of 15, 16 years and we see General Motors versus Toyota. Now, General Motors taking 34 hours or so to build a car versus Toyota, about 28. But also the labor costs of General Motors and Toyota, quite different. So who's going to compete more efficiently? It's really obvious that Toyota is going to smash General Motors because it makes the cars faster and therefore its costs are lower, its productivity is more efficient. And that's what we're looking for. So when we talk about early adoption of digital strategies, early transformation, putting in these new measures, this is why. Your competitors are going to be doing it or you're going to be doing it. Someone is going to be winning. And as in, I gave the farming example. Now I look at manufacturing. By 2021, 16 years later, Toyota has shaved off another 10 hours in terms of the car build time. Now we're looking at 30,000 components being put together and they can do it 10 hours faster. So that is the amazing leap forward that we're going to expect as we move into this digital realm. So it's critical for you to understand it and be a part of it and implement it. So part A talks about the digital finance landscape. And I just want to tie off the Module 1 objectives. So evaluate the complexity of digital transformation and its impact on the work of accounting and finance professionals. Now, interestingly, an article just came out on the 23rd of June, 2021, and we see that accountants are prioritised at the top of skilled migration in Australia. They're really important. Accountants, taxation accountants, management accountants, external auditors, and internal auditors. Fabulous. But what's really interesting is we hear that National Australia Bank is cost-cutting as it decides to go for simpler, faster bank. We have lawyers, accountants joining the list of workers who are going to lose their jobs to AI. High vulnerability report. Look at accountants and auditors, and then payroll and timekeepers, and then tax preparers. Incredibly vulnerable because things are being automated. Data analysis, machine learning, artificial intelligence is replacing people. So your career, one way or the other, for positive or not, is going to change. So we also have to analyze the complexity associated with practical implementation of the technologies and support the adoption of digital technologies. And there's a lot of discussion in the study guide of agile type methods. So agile, when you do software development or projects, is quick, iterative, prototypes, lots of movement. Whereas waterfall, the old way, you do things really slowly. You step by step, you do everything right. And it takes years and often never gets implemented. So waterfall has some benefits because it's more rigorous, but it often leads to lethargy and inaction. So how can you do agile project management? That's a key component discussed in Part A and Module 1 and throughout. So your learning objectives were 20% of the exam, which is 15 out of the 75 marks. So Part A looks at the landscape of digital finance, what's going on. So it talks about industry, big data, the 3 A's of automation, the 4 V's of big data, and the accounting and finance function being transformed. So we move towards a digital mindset, data analysis skills, finance skills combined with behavioral skills, and being more agile and able to support with funding. So figure 1.1 is a really good snapshot of all the different things that are happening in digital finance. And we'll be exploring these a little bit in Module 1 and then in much more detail in later modules. Some good examples keep popping up as well. So there's that theory side, and we use some Air Wallets examples throughout the study guide. Brewdog is a good example of some crowdfunding in a new product. So yes, it's a traditional product, beer. It's been around thousands of years, but new and innovative ways of financing the development of that organization. And then we look at different areas of innovation and how to make change. And one of the key things, normally when people innovate, they focus on the product, but this is a very low portion of where value's been created. In the last decade, finance, business models, and networking, along with processes, has where all of the value creation from innovation has been coming from. Then we look at the evolution of money a little bit and how technology has transformed banking and financial markets right up to the cryptocurrencies and what's going on there. And you may or may not be investing in that area. It's a pretty volatile space. Then part B of Module 1 looks at the finance ecosystem, what's going on, how does it all combine together? So key components, software, data, and ICT infrastructure. And a practical example of this is the e-payment system. So do you have an e-wallet? Credit cards have been around for decades, but e-wallets a little bit less, tap and go, NFC, people using their phones much more readily to just quickly transfer money by text message, items like that. And even blockchain, that idea of distributed ledgers and coming into the e-payment realm. So then we move into fintech and the innovations that are happening that are transforming the environment even more rapidly than before. There's a whole lot of fintech. You'll have heard of the most obvious ones, crypto and Bitcoin and big data, online banking. You may not have heard of APIs, but that's sort of the tech, the coding that makes a lot of this magic happen. Then there's some regulatory type areas. So AML, anti-money laundering, is also just as important with fintech. As funds are transferring around the world so rapidly, better supervising and regulation is critical. And then emerging trends. So, have you heard of edge computing? Do you see how it works? The Internet of Things is another fancy term. Lots of people talking about the cloud. Interestingly, a decade ago, most people hadn't really heard about the cloud. And if they had, it was just a hypothetical concept. Now it's just sort of ubiquitous. It's absolutely everywhere. And part D, digital transformation. How does change happen? And a good example, and I mentioned this briefly as well in the subject overview, is Xero, the accounting software provider, did a great example of a digital transformation project and just how complicated it is. So this one, they migrated 1.4 petabytes of data. They had to transfer it from their servers into the cloud, run their systems parallel to make sure that they were working efficiently and release it. It's expensive, it's time consuming, it's really, really difficult. So managing a 2-year project with hundreds, if not thousands of people, with millions of customers, you've got to get it right. And there's a lot of obstacles and a lot of problems that are sometimes technology-based, sometimes people-based. So an interesting article here showing 84% of these digital transformation projects fail. So if they don't deliver the right outcomes, what's going wrong? As future accounting and finance professionals, we need to be able to implement these effectively. So the role of accounting and finance professionals, understanding this work, implementing this work, supervising this work, regulating this work. It's going to be a busy time for people in this realm. So that's the quick overview. Time for you to dive into the deep reading and videos as we go through this module. Thanks.